You are now tuned into the Victims Advocate podcast with the Victims Advocate himself, Brandon Stein. Let's get to it.
Welcome to the Victims Advocate podcast with Brandon Stein. My name is, of course, Brandon Stein, and I'm glad to have you here. Now, one thing I saw on the news is I saw in Ohio there was chaos at a courtroom. That was the headline, chaos in a courtroom. Now, one thing I know from what I do in advocating for victims, representing victims, being in courtrooms hundreds, if not, forget hundreds, thousands of times, I've never seen this, but what I do know is I feel pretty safe in a courtroom. I feel safe in a courtroom in the sense that in order to get into that courthouse, what I do know is you got to go through security. What I do know is you can't bring weapons. What I do know is they have either police officers, security officers, or deputies that are checking you as if it's surveillance in an airport. And they're very, very strict when it comes to what you bring in, even if it comes to food. You know, some courthouses I've been in, you can't bring in a glass container with your lunch. I've been in trial before where I brought my lunch, it was in a glass container, and I had to throw out the whole lunch because they wouldn't let me bring in the glass container because obviously, I guess from their standpoint, it could be a weapon, you know, it could be a projectile. So I came across this video in a courtroom, and it showed just chaos. And then I'm wondering what the hell happened? What prompted it? It must have been some political event or something that is gets people very heated. So let's see what happened first. So what I want to do is let's take a look at the actual event and what happened here.
We saw a dramatic scene in court today after commotion erupted in the courtroom gallery where the hearing was being held. Joining us now, NBC News correspondent Shaquille Bruce.
So, it did look like chaos. Obviously it's maybe a sense of some clickbait there when you see chaos at a hearing, but that is chaos. That's not something you normally see. And in most cases it's very civilized. But there has to have been something, in my eyes, that prompts that type of reaction and that type of crowd. I mean, that was a lot of people in the courtroom. What the hell are they all doing there? So when I looked further into the story, it involved a father in Ohio whose son was tragically shot and killed by the police a day before. Okay, but why is the father in scrubs? He's in jailhouse garbs. Why? So a day after, what this father did was what seems to be in just a panicked rage. He went and he ran over a deputy, a retired deputy who was serving traffic duty. I don't know if it was volunteering or just filling in for traffic duty. And he killed the guy, killed an officer. So he was arrested for the fatality. Now, one thing we do know is the defense, their argument is, hey, wait a minute, their defense is they're not disputing what happened. They were silent. The defense lawyer was silent as to what happened. Isn't saying that it didn't happen. Obviously, it's very hard to deny the fact that you're driving a car or a vehicle and you kill someone. You can't run away from that. So where the defense is going with this is that the emotional state of the defendant, this Ohio father, is what led to this reaction. That he was in such an emotional state, you could only imagine a day after your son is shot and killed by a police officer, and he was in such an emotional, maybe anger state, whatever, and that's what led to it. And one thing that we also know is that there was a video that apparently was released, and he saw a video of this police officer shooting and killing his son. So what the hell are you supposed to do? I mean, that's obviously not reasonable. You can't be doing that. But it is a defense when it comes in the criminal context. Now, I'm not a criminal defense lawyer, but what I do know is there are defenses that can absolve you of absolve you of guilt and serve as an excuse, a reason that you did what you did. That you may not be disputing that you did what you did, but there's a reason behind it. There's an excuse. And that seems to be the defense that, at least initially, that they're putting forth. Now, to see a video like this, to see a video of your son shot and killed, and knowing whether it's Gardner, whether it's what happened with Derek Chauvin, whoever it may be, these police officers killing black men, black boys, that's what we're seeing. And when it's African Americans being shot down, choked out, whatever it may be, and then you have another incident like this, well, okay, now I can see why there was probably chaos in that courtroom. Because the chaos that we saw was just in the gallery, which is basically the audience of a courtroom. It was arising and flowing from the gallery. So obviously, whenever you have these shootings, tensions are always high. Now, it does seem like it got under control pretty quickly. It didn't escalate into anything. There were no weapons, and like I said, you can't bring weapons into a courthouse. It's very difficult. It's got to be some inside job or something that you see out of the movies to bring them in. It's not going to happen. So when you have that chaos, you got deputies there, you got bailiffs there to break it up. That's why they're sitting there. That's why they're there. Seems like they're doing nothing, but they're there in the event something like this happens and just separates everyone, breaks it up, and go about our day. But really what's concerning is that this story in the news, it didn't pop up on my feed because of a boy getting shot and killed and then a deputy getting killed the day after by the father of the boy that was shot and killed. It popped up because there was chaos in the courtroom. And this is significant, obviously, because when it comes down to it, when you have these shootings, it's all too frequent. I mean, this is just, weeks after, the FSU shooting. And listen, I'm certainly pro Second Amendment. I think you should have a right to defend yourself. You should have a right to carry or possess firearms, because like I've said in the past, police, they can't be everywhere. So you need to have that ability to protect yourself if the time comes. But there's of course a fine line, and when it comes to the easy accessibility of these firearms, the gun violence is just out of control. And for what I do on the civil side, I see all too often you have felons with firearms not registered to them, because obviously if you're a convicted felon, you can't carry a firearm. It's a felony. You're just not allowed to do it. And boys, innocent children, people get shot and killed. People get shot and injured. And it's just getting to a point where it's out of control. So what I think is, when you have these types of events and you have police officers, and I don't know what happened, I don't know what the circumstances were as to why the police shot and killed this boy or this kid. One thing I do know is that no one's ever completely innocent. Very few times are both sides completely innocent. It happens, but in this situation, or in any of these police-related fatality situations, you hear from police officers on that side of the line, and they say, well, I had justification. I feared for my life. I felt this guy was reaching for a weapon, and I responded. And that may not even be the case. Then you have from the other side, and they didn't even have a firearm. Someone was walking around just with a hoodie, and maybe the color of their skin, and that's why they were shot. So each side has their own justification. No one's just out there to, be murderers. I really believe that. But I do believe when you have police officers and they're in this line of duty every single day, every single minute they're on edge, they become either cynical, they become paranoid, they become maybe overprotective of themselves, too fearful. And when I say cynical, it's because you see bad things happening all the time. You see bad shit happening all the time. But in reality, you have to be perfect every step of the way. Because one slip up where you lose your cool and just lose your head, you end up like Derek Chauvin and in prison. One slip up. So obviously I'm very sympathetic to the job of police officers and how difficult it is. But when it comes down to it, when you wear that badge, when you go through that training, whatever the heck the training is, you have to be perfect every step of the way when it comes to firearms, when it comes to using force. And I do believe the training is just not enough. So if you have that type of power, and in the streets, no one has more power than the police. I mean, they when you got that badge, you can make things happen, you can make things go away. I've had cases where police officers have done a terrible job investigating homicides, have done a terrible job with patrol, where security companies have done a terrible job with patrol, where they're just marking boxes, checking boxes. And I've seen cases where security officers have elected not to patrol certain areas because it's too dangerous. So they have all the power. But these kids who are out there on the streets, they're just looking for survival. They're thrown into this type of life. Not only are they watching bullets coming from other neighbors, other people in their neighborhood, but now they're also worrying about coming from the police. And is this going to be a good officer for me, someone who's trying to help me, or someone who has a grudge, or someone who acts irrationally, or someone who makes that just one mistake? Because all it takes is one freaking mistake and you're done as an officer. It's over. So I don't know what the heck happened here. I don't know what the circumstances were that led to this this man's son being shot. But what will be interesting, and we'll probably never hear about it again because it seems like the only reason why we heard about it is because there was chaos in the courtroom, but it will be interesting to see how that defense goes and whether or not that type of defense, whatever they decide to, plead after pleading not guilty, whatever they decide to argue and put forth a trial, assuming it gets to a trial and they don't plea it out, if his emotional state plays a role. Because I think anyone who has family and who's lost a loved one, emotional state can come into play. But are his actions reasonable under the circumstances? Well, we'll see. We'll talk to you later.
That's a wrap. Thanks for joining us on the Victims Advocate podcast with Brandon Stein, and we'll see you on the next one. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at The Victim Advocate, on YouTube at The Victims Advocate, and visit our website at victimadvocate.com.